Hello everyone, this is Pooka and welcome to another edition of Bad Deck Monday. And in this video we're going to be taking a look at a deck that I've covered already, but we fixed a few things, so we're going to take another look at it because I think this is kind of a neat deck and I always have fun playing this. So I have already looked at this before, so we're just going to gloss over it quickly. It's going to be the Vileplume deck. We're revolving around its ability Allergy Panic. Each weakness for Pokemon is ×4 instead of the regular ×2. So obviously we're going to try to take advantage of this by playing every type of Pokemon. That way we can attack our opponent for weakness every time and try to get one-hit knockouts for low energy attacks and go from there. So we have ×4 weakness, and we can combine that with cards like Muscle Band, which add 20 more damage, and Silver Bangle, which adds 30 more damage against Pokemon EX. So basically, if you're doing 40 damage regularly, ×4, that's 160. If you're doing 20 damage regularly, plus 30 from Silver Bangle, that's 50 ×4, that's 200 damage. So it adds up very quickly, and that's what makes the deck work. What Pokemon do we have? Well, number one, we have Emolga. This is kind of a cool Pokemon overall in this deck because it has a free retreat cost. It's a nice starter. It can also use Call for Family to search for Pokemon, and it helps as your lightning attacker. For 1 lightning, it does Static Shock for 20. And again, if you have a Silver Bangle and a Vileplume in play, this is doing 200 damage to Yveltal EX, Lugia EX, and any other EX that's weak to lightning. Against Pokemon that are just weak to lightning, a Muscle Band will hit for 160 damage, so this is perfect. 2 Emolga because lightning weak Pokemon are so popular, and it's such a good starter as well. For the other ones, we can only really afford to run 1 of them, since there is not much space in this deck. You have to run so much stuff in this deck. We have 1 Cobalion EX. Righteous Edge is amazing, especially with Muscle Band. 30 base damage is really good, and of course this is going to be good against those fairy Pokemon, and also those things like Kyurem that are weak to metal. So Righteous Edge is awesome. It's also a big body. It is a 180 HP Pokemon. I can't talk. But it can just take a hit sometimes, whereas most of these Pokemon are kind of weak because I just chose whatever does 20 damage. So Cobalion EX is nice. It also has a solid attack for 3 energy, something that this deck lacks. If you can hit for weakness, this deck really doesn't do much, so it's nice to have something that actually does 100 damage for 3 energy. Next we have Mewtwo, which can use Power Edge for 2 colorless energy. 30 damage gets the job done against Psychic Pokemon. We have Fion. This is another awesome Pokemon that's kind of versatile, very similar to Emolga. So the attack Aqua Boomerang is the one we're going to use. It does 20, and then you return it and all cards attached to your hand. So against fire Pokemon, this is actually awesome, or anything that's weak to water, like Landorus EX, for example. You can just put a Silver Bangle, hit it for 200, and then you return it back to your hand with the item and the energy. So instead of being knocked out and losing those resources, we actually keep the card. This is an awesome card in this deck. Now it also has Pull Out, which is very good as well. Put a card from your discard pile on top of your deck. So this is one of my favorite Pokemon in this deck, and it also has some pretty sweet artwork. Next up we have Yveltal. This is good against Pokemon that are weak to dark, such as Drifblim. It has Oblivion Wing, does 30. That's really all it's for. We can't really do much else with it, but Darkness Blade, it can do 100 as well. So just like Cobalion EX, it's nice to have that attack that can actually do a big chunk of damage on its own without relying on weakness. Then we have Rayquaza, the Dragon Slayer. Dragon Pulse does 40, and boy does that add up quickly when you multiply it ×4. Either a Muscle Band or a Silver Bangle will knock out any Dragon-type EX when you have Vileplume in play. So this is an awesome card, and 40 for 1 is pretty decent no matter what. Shred is solid as well. Then we have Stunfisk. Muddy Water with the Silver Bangle can do 200 damage to things like Thundurus EX that are weak to fighting, or Darkrai EX, and also 20 damage to one of your opponent's benched Pokemon. so that's pretty cool. And then Rumble can be useful as well to prevent retreating. Then we have one Reshiram, Outrage, pretty simple. If anything actually hits Reshiram and it's weak to fire, boy, that thing is going to get destroyed by Outrage. You do 10 more damage for each damage counter on Reshiram with a base damage of 20, so it's pretty sweet. Or if you're facing a Fire Weak Pokemon EX, a Silver Bangle helps you hit 50 times 4, so that's pretty cool. And then we have the Silent Killer Combi. Yep, Sting Missile does 30, and then you get to shuffle it and all cards attached to it into your deck. So with a Muscle Band or Silver Bangle, this will knock out things like Keldeo EX or anything else that's weak to grass. Just this little Combi, just for 1 energy, can knock those things out. We can also use an Oddish to do that as well, since Acid does do 20. But it's just so much cooler when you do it with Combi. So that is the deck, basically. We can take a look at all the trainers too, but it's pretty straightforward. It's a deck that has a lot of stuff to fit in, so it's going to be inconsistent. It's only a 2-1-2 Vileplume line with 2 rare candy, so not that great. We do need 2 Super Rod, since we do need to shuffle in specific Pokemon repeatedly to hit for weakness. And otherwise, we just have a couple switching cards, a Floatstone, a Switch, an Escape Rope. We have 3 Ultra Ball, 2 Level Ball, 1 Heavy Ball to search for our Pokemon. And one of the big additions is Town Map, since if a specific Pokemon is prized for a matchup, say you're facing a deck that's weak to fighting, and your Stunfisk is in your prizes, we need to get that out of the prizes immediately and use Town Map to find where it is. So this is a very good card in this deck. Of course, we have the Silver Bangles and Muscle Bands as we did before. And the A-Spec for the deck is Dowsing Machine, which allows us to recover some of our resources. Discard 2 cards and put a trainer card from the discard pile back into your hand. Our energy is pretty simple. 4 Rainbow, 4 Prism, and 3 double colorless energy. That's really all we need. We're hoping to just hit EXs for 200 with our simple Pokemon here. And I really think this deck is awesome. It's not very practical, but it's fun to use, definitely. So let's take a look at a game I played with it. And, it should be an interesting game. Anything with Vileplume is going to be interesting, but let's go ahead and take a look at that right now. So, we're going up against Anna-K in all capital letters. And starting off with the Emolga. And I have 2 other Pokemon. I was going first, so there's no need to bench anything. You know you can't lose when you're going first. And you can't get end when you're going first, so you don't really need to bench those Pokemon. I see a Trubbish, which is not good there's 2 scenarios for this. Number 1 is a Garbodor deck. And I accept a loss to a Garbodor deck when I'm playing this because it's Bad Deck Monday, and 1 Tool Scrapper does not do anything. I could maybe play a Pokemon Catcher to try to beat Garbodor, but I'll just go ahead and concede the fact that I will never beat Garbodor with this deck. Number 2 option is that this is a Tool Drop deck, which is almost just as bad. Tool Drop is horrible for this deck for a lot of reasons. Number 1, it's quick. It can put on pressure very quickly. Number 2, it is a non-EX deck, which means I have to take 6 knockouts. This is not good. We like to knock out big EXs. We're a slow deck, and then we try to come back. Doesn't work against a deck that plays all non-EXs. And number 3, I do not play Tool Scrapper, so oh boy, that Rock Guard is going to be mighty painful. And the EXP share will always stay on the field, and any other tools, this is going to be a doozy. So it is a Tool Drop deck. We do see the Rock Guard on the Trubbish. Now let's see what we can do here. Now he leaves it active, and we actually have an opening here to do something. I'm going to go ahead and discard Vileplume and Rainbow Energy, and we're going to grab my Mewtwo. Now, this is strange because we can actually knock out something without having Vileplume in play. This doesn't happen very often with this deck. We're going to get the Mewtwo, put a DCE and a Muscle Band on it. And now we can retreat and actually get the first prize. This is huge. We're going to Power Edge for 100 with the Muscle Band. I'll take 60 from the Rock Guard, which is pretty annoying. But otherwise, we did get the first prize. That is big. Now we have some time, all right? We have some time to set up, some time to just sit back, get our stuff in play, and try to make this a game. We can get Vileplume in play. My opponent realistically cannot attack for 2 more turns because there's no energy in play. And we got the first prize, so it just gives us a little bit of breathing room. We won't be behind. We can actually wait for my opponent to attack now and then go from there. Now we do see a Meloetta. What? Oh no! Psychic actually knocks me out. So much for my little bit of reprieve there. Yeah, my opponent can actually attack this turn. Who plays Meloetta? Come on. And that means if my opponent wants to use Psychic, that can certainly be a knockout. I'm a Mewtwo, but alright. Thankfully, there is no Psychic attack right there. And now we gotta figure out what to do. Unfortunately, I did put Silver Bangle on my Emolga. So if I were to get a Vileplume out this turn and use Static Shock, I would not knock out that Sigilyph, and that is very annoying. There's no real point in doing 80 damage to it. Suppose I could finish it off later with a Stunfisk, but you never know if there's things like Hard Charm or Eviolite that are going to prevent that. I'm going to be a little tricky here. We're going to grab an Escape Rope with the Skyla and, again, just try to get up on prizes. All right, we're going to force the Meloetta out, and I'm going to put a little pressure on. We're going to Power Edge for 100 and then attach a Rainbow to Mewtwo. If my opponent leaves that Sigilyph active and doesn't have anything else, we can threaten a Psy-Slash for the game, but looks like that's not going to be the case, as a Trubbish and a Sigilyph both come down on the field. Looking back, I might have been better off just attaching to Cobalion EX, prepping a big attacker, that can just do 100. Otherwise, I'm just going to be relying on Mewtwo over and over, and that's probably not good. But again, we will see what happens. There's a lot of game left. We're up 2 prizes, which I never thought would be possible with this Vileplume deck. I took a prize turn 2 and then turn 3 without a Vileplume in play. No idea how that happened. Well, I know how it happened, but I never thought this could happen, that I would take a prize turn 2 with a Mewtwo, Muscle Band, Power Edge. It just seems extremely silly. Now we'll have to see what happens. There is a Surskit coming down, and of course that is Masquerain for Tool Drop, so that's going to be pretty good for my opponent. I have a switch here. I'm going to switch into the Emolga, attach a Prism onto my Cobalion EX, and then N, put myself at 4 and my opponent at 6, and I'm going to grab a second Emolga here. Number 1 for free retreat. Number 2, I need to knock out that Sigilyph somehow. So I'm going to Tropical Beach for 4 new cards, just saying, you know what, we have a 2-prize lead. I don't even have Vileplume out yet. Let's just sit back and wait. I can do that. I can hide behind my Emolga for now. Even if there's an Escape Rope, we have an Oddish to sacrifice. Could even sacrifice Emolga. And this is actually looking pretty good right now. But I am worried about what can happen over the course of the game. When it comes to things like N disrupting me and just kind of running out of resources, once it gets to a certain point, that Tool Drop deck will take a prize every single turn, and I cannot miss a beat. And we can actually see attacks from Sigilyph, and an energy switch. Oh no. Oh no. I'm actually going to get Tool Drop this turn. So that's a pretty good attack. It just allowed my opponent to attack out of nowhere. Or, let's see, what is happening? Did my opponent retreat to the wrong Pokemon? No, a Psychic Energy's going on to the Oh no, I'm going to get hit by Cutting Wind. What the heck? Alright, that's actually pretty annoying because Sigilyph is kind of tough to deal with. And if my opponent has some EXP shares to put down, it can just retain some of that energy. I would probably have to use Mewtwo's Psy Slash to get rid of it, but I don't have another Prism or Rainbow, and I need one of those to attack this Sigilyph. And we do see the EXP share come down, so this is kind of a curveball. You don't see this very often. Sigilyph attacking, but hey, it's going to work here. Emolga only has 70 HP, and we do see 2 Rocky Helmets. Oh, goodness. And I do not... If I draw a Rainbow or a Prism here, we can just Skyla for a Muscle Band and Static Shock that thing, knock it out, and go from there. Otherwise, we're going to have to buy a turn, maybe retreat to that Stunfisk and try to figure something out. Overall, not a great spot to be in. Now, another thing that's kind of bad about this matchup is my opponent only needs like 4 or 5 tools to knock out basically everything in my deck. Since my Pokemon are pretty low HP, Tool Drop will almost always get a one-hit knockout on my Pokemon. Exception being Cobalion EX, but by the time that attacks, there will probably be a bazillion tools in play, and there won't be anything I can do about it. And there we see the Cutting Wind for 70 damage. Oh no. What do we draw? Not a Prism, not a Rainbow. So not a good draw. Let's see. I'm going to take a Heavy Ball, and we're just going to check to see how much stuff is left in here. Got Muscle Band in there. That's what I'm looking for. And we're going to bench that Rayquaza. And we're probably going to sacrifice it right here. Let's see. I could play a Skyla for another supporter. I'm going to sacrifice either the Rayquaza or the Stunfisk here, just so I can buy some time. And our 2-prize lead is basically going to evaporate very quickly. I could Ultra Ball for something as well. I think that's what I'm going to do here. Discarding Silver Bangle since that's worthless in this matchup. And Rayquaza. And I could get Reshiram. I guess that could work. You know, if my opponent decides to use Cutting Wind, I can just Outrage for the knockout. So it seems like that's a good Pokemon to put active in this situation. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, we'll retreat into the Reshiram. And then just Tropical Beach for 3. There's nothing I really needed a Skyla for. Could have gone for a supporter or something, but I actually want to save that for Muscle Band. So we're going to just hold on to that for now. Alrighty then. So we got the Reshiram active. And we'll see if my opponent indeed does use Cutting Wind. That way we can get another cheap knockout with Outrage. If not, my opponent can just kind of wait and then Tool Drop next turn. And that'll be pretty annoying. Because I would like to see Cutting Wind on my Reshiram. I would like to just Outrage here and get a free prize. But no, looks like my opponent very intelligently will retreat into the other Sigilyph. Probably just take this turn to Tropical Beach. And that's a very smart play. A lot of people would just kind of keep attacking. And then a Reshiram would get the knockout there. But no, not the case. My opponent just sets up for a Tool Drop next turn. That's very smart. So, now I still don't have that Prism energy to attack with Emolga. I'm going to Colress for the full 10 cards, which is awesome. That is the most powerful draw in the game. 10 cards off of one supporter. That's ridiculous. And I got some energy now. We got some stuff to work with. I'm just going to attach another Prism to the Cobalion EX and then pass the turn. So at some point we'll at least be able to power up Steel Bullet for a knockout on anything in this deck. Everything has a 90 HP or less, so we can just Steel Bullet for a final knockout. That's going to be the goal. If we get down to 1 prize, that's just kind of checkmate. You cannot deal with Cobalion EX at that point. Unless there's a giant cape. That could be kind of annoying. We do see an Elisa can search for 3 Pokemon tools here. We shall see what 3 those are. Float Stone, Silver Bangle, EXP share. And at this point, this is Cobalion EX not working anymore. Not surviving a hit. It does resist Psychic. It does have 180 hit points. But there are a lot of tools in play. Even more are coming. So there's no way any of my Pokemon will survive anymore. That's kind of the strength of this Tool Drop deck. once it gets enough tools in play, it can just destroy any Pokemon with a simple tool drop attack. Of course, this deck will phase out once the surprise Megaphone card comes out in Flash Fire, but that's not for a month or two, so we don't worry about that right now. Now we do see the Trubbish coming out with the 2 energy, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 tools in play, 8 if you include my Mewtwo EX. So there's, or not Mewtwo EX, regular Mewtwo. So yeah, there's a lot of tools in play, nothing survives the wrath of Trubbish. And we're going to have to find some way to do this now. And yep, there's even more tools. More and more and more tools. How are we going to deal with this? Alright. I'm still trying to figure out a way. We're going to be tied in prizes after this. Obviously, I can use Mewtwo to take a knockout, but it's kind of planning. How are we going to get all 4 of our prizes before my opponent does? How do we take a prize every turn? That is going to be the question here. And it's a good question. It's going to be really difficult. I'm going to Skyla here for an Ultra Ball, just to get something else prepared for next turn. That's the idea. I'm going to take the knockout with Mewtwo and then prepare for next turn by grabbing the Ultra Ball. Because next turn I'm going to have to Super Rod, Ultra Ball for the Mewtwo after I shuffle it back in, and then drop a new double colorless. I need to have that option ready. So that seems like the best way to go. And we can attach a Prism onto Cobalion EX. We got the 3 energy over there ready to go whenever we need to. And let us Power Edge for 200 damage. Take that, Trubbish. And I'm going to get hit for ridiculous amounts of damage on the following turn. Thanks to my own Vileplume. Okay. So let's see who comes out next. Got the Sigilift coming out. We need to be prepared for all options here. Basically, from here, we need to take 2 more knockouts, and then I can win. That's the idea. If I can get an Emolga to knock out Sigilift, and then a Mewtwo to knock out Trubbish, we will be set, because Cobalion EX, of course, is that trump card to take the final knockout. I really don't think I can use Cobalion EX before that, because I'll lose the prize exchange. I'll actually be losing in prizes if I do that. So this is a very delicate situation. You can see how bad of a matchup this is for this deck, because I was ahead 2 prizes and then just it's all falling apart still. Again, this is not good against any decks that do not run Pokemon EX. That's kind of your key. You want to be able to do 200 to EXs over and over. But this is not happening. Alright, we see an Ultra Ball. Discarding another Surskit and Masquerain. Getting another Trubbish. So the army of Trubbish is here. And I'm going to have to deal with it every single turn. There's no way my opponent is missing an attack from here on out. It's up to me to figure out a way to take 3 more knockouts. To not miss a turn of a knockout. Now we'll have to see what actually attacks this turn. If it's Sigilift, we might be in some trouble. I would need to get a Muscle Band onto Emolga. And then Static Shock for the knockout. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. If Trubbish attacks, I have it easy. I just Ultra Ball, or Super Rod the Mewtwo back in, Ultra Ball for it, drop the double colorless, and Power Edge for the knockout. That would be pretty simple. I don't know, this is interesting. And yeah, we see the Cutting Wind for 280 damage. Ay, ay, ay. That's a big amount of damage. Alright, so let's Super Rod here for Mewtwo, Emolga, and it doesn't really matter what else I get. It could be Rayquaza, could be Reshiram, could be Vileplume, doesn't matter. We can Ultra Ball, get rid of Comb B and an N, and we're going to grab Mewtwo. Just might as well get that into play. And then we can bench Stunfisk as well. Colress for 10, hope to hit the Muscle Band. That seems pretty good. I think there's only 1 Muscle Band left, so this is kind of big. We could get Dowsing Machine as well, though. So here we go. Colress for 10, and we got it. All right. So there is the Muscle Band onto the Emolga, and now we can Static Shock for 160 damage. That's going to get the job done in the Sigilyph. We're going to go down to 2 prizes. Yep, there we go. Static Shock. And I need to grab this Float Stone here out of the prizes. It's nice that I know that it's in the prizes. I need to take this because if my Emolga gets knocked out by another Sigilyph, then I need to have something to promote to retreat. And then I can retreat into Emolga number 2 and get the knockout again. So very, very delicate situation here. Anything can happen, and I'm hoping my opponent doesn't play an N because that would be bad news. It would be almost surely a loss for Team Bad Deck Monday. We do see a Rocky Helmet. And what else is going to happen? This is an interesting turn again. It depends on what my opponent attacks with. If my opponent attacks with Trubbish, we can get the Mewtwo knockout with Power Edge pretty simply. If my opponent attacks with Sigilyph, we'll have to use Emolga. And this is just really tough. And this is still a very close game. It can go either way. And I'm very unsure as to who's going to win. My opponent has some decisions to make. If my opponent commits to Sigilyph, my opponent would have to commit, one of the toolbox Pokemon. And that might open up Cabalini X to attack if I can end my opponent down to 2 and leave my opponent with only so much room to use. Only so much room to have tools in play. The Sigilyph is, of course, the big thing. It allows you to have 4 tools attached to itself. So if my opponent only has 1 Sigilyph and 3 Trubbish and a Masquerain in play, and I take out one of those Sigilyph and end my opponent down to 2 cards, we can Steel Bullet and perhaps survive an attack from Trubbish and win from there. So that might be what's going to happen. I don't really know. There's all sorts of things that could happen. Rocky Helmet could be a game changer, since the damage done to my Pokemon would be obnoxious. Man, what is going to happen here? I am just not sure, folks. This is going to be very, very close. And this is nerve-wracking. What is going to happen? Will the Tool Drop deck win, or will the mighty, mighty Vileplume come out on top? We do see a Sigilyph coming active. So it looks like that is my opponent's choice of attackers here. We see the energy switch up active, and that means we're going to see a Cutting Wind. Oh no. We see the Rocky Helmet coming back, and that might go on the active. If my opponent puts like 3 Rocky Helmets on the active, or 4 Rocky Helmets on the active, that could be bad. If I attack with Emolga, then I get knocked out. That would be so bad. Oh man. We'll see. I don't know. This is close. And my opponent is moving all sorts of tools around. This is very complicated. It's going to come down to these next 2 turns, basically. We see a Rocky Helmet come back, a Float Stone go down. We see musical chairs going on with all these Pokemon tools going all over the place, trying to figure out which one goes where and what should happen next. Who's attacking, who's on first, what's on second. We see a Silver Mirror, a Rocky Helmet, another Rocky Helmet, and what else is happening? Another Rocky Helmet goes on the active. Another Rocky Helmet goes on the active. What's next? Oh, just a Cutting Wind for 70. There's just 2 Rocky Helmets. Wow, if a third one went there, I would have been in some trouble, I think, because I only have a Rainbow Energy to put onto Emolga. Wow. Yeah, I would have been knocked out by Rocky Helmet. That's kind of strange, but that's what would have happened. Alright, so I'm going to Juniper here, draw my entire deck, because I know I have Super Rod left, and I need to get that Dowsing Machine back. So let's go ahead and Super Rod, so I don't deck out. Put in 3 Pokemon, does not matter at all what I get. Let's do, yeah, those guys. We can Dowsing Machine for the Muscle Band. Getting rid of, it doesn't really matter, Juniper, and whatever. It really doesn't matter what I get rid of. We're going to take Muscle Band out of the discard pile. So we can Static Shock once again. We have the Float Stone on Vileplume, retreat for free into Emolga, and Muscle Band Static Shock 160. And that means Cobalion EX should be able to clean up the final prize for this game. Oh man, I can't believe I could beat this deck with Vileplume. What will happen on this final turn? Now, I still could lose to something like a Pokemon catcher, bringing out Cobalion EX and knocking it out. That would be a devastating way to lose this match. But if that doesn't happen, I think we have done it. We have pulled off the impossible. We have defeated the mighty Tool Drop deck with our Mewtwo Emolga Vileplume combo. Attacking for weakness at every opportunity. That's really all we've done. Attack with Emolga and Mewtwo, Power Edge, and Static Shock. Those are the only attacks I've used this game, I'm pretty sure. We do see a Skyla. What is this gonna go for? Could be all sorts of stuff. Muscle Band, that is not something I'm concerned about. What will happen? What will happen on this turn? Will Anna K come out on top, or have we figured out some way to take our 6 prizes before our opponent does? This is suspenseful. My opponent is taking her sweet time. I think we see, well, I don't know. Does my opponent have a way to dodge the Cobalion EX getting that final knockout? I don't think so. Trubbish, 70 HP, even with something like a giant cape, would not survive. Sidgelift doesn't have the energy to attack. If my opponent wants to put that up to stall, Emolga would just Static Shock for the win, and we see the Tool Drop for 200. And you know what that means? Cobalion EX is all ready to go. I could just use Mewtwo for Power Edge, but I think Cobalion EX deserves to come in for the final attack. Drops an anvil on Trubbish's head, crushing it. And Vileplume gets the win over Tool Drop in this beautiful game from Bad Deck Monday. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I will certainly have some more for you soon. I am Pooka from the Top Cut, and I will see you guys next time.